time. This one may have come in under that, but you've got a yellow poplar and a sweet gum side by side. I have a stand on Ames where the trees were planted within 10 seconds of each other. Yellow poplar's this big, and then right beside it, yellow poplar's this big. So, guaranteed to have been on the... Now, we should begin to see something limiting here. Not so far, nothing. Everything looks good.
On that statement where it's just, but if you take out the larger poplar, will the one next to it that was smaller all have that opportunity to grab that sunlight and get larger, or will it really not ever grow larger?
Will it respond? Yeah,
yes,
in some cases it will. But you have to keep in mind that there was some basic underlying reason they're small to begin with. And so it could be that it can't do that. Especially some of the very smallest ones, they're so far behind now that they don't have a chance. So yes and no, probably not. Some trees like white oak, if they're suppressed for some period of time, will never respond.
Your assumption is lack of sunlight, but not necessarily.
Not necessarily. There's a genetic component as well. Yeah. Got a huge research project where we capture, let's say, acorns off of that tree. The acorns hit the ground under that tree. They're half siblings. We know who Mama is, there she is, but we don't know who the daddies are because the pollen comes from a long way. And what happens is that we actually do genetic trials on those trees, and that's part of the research that we're doing. It's pretty involved. But I guess y'all know that they've been loblolly pine. They've been breeding those since the 50s, certainly since the 60s. 29, I think, 29 different traits you can breed into a loblolly pine. Well, we've hit nothing yet. It's kind of indicative to me by having yellow poplar here. Yellow poplar is a real picky species. But I know that when I beginning to gray up a little bit, what we should find if there are moisture aeration problems here, we should get into a wet soil, the gray soil. Down about 20 inches.
Well, is there any way to tell if the tree's not going to grow any larger, or is it really just no one really knows?
Crown class. We would look up, we have dominant, co-dominant, intermediate, and suppressed trees. And if those trees are in the intermediate stages, that is, they're up there, but they're not competing very well, sometimes they won't respond. The engine of a tree is its crown. That's the motor. And if the motor ever gets suppressed to a certain point, it can't really pick back up quick enough to really respond. Remember, these are even age stands, and so as a result, if it hasn't done very well, it's probably not gonna. I'm not picking up the gray. Yellow poplar. I don't know where I dug that hole last time. Maybe I dug down in there. And the yellow poplar sort of, that poplar doing so well tells me that there's not much here that's similar to the... Pick it up a little gray now. Now you can see the streaks of gray.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from a perched water table. See it? See the gray? That's an anaerobic condition, and it's called modeling. And so we would actually judge this site based on the depth to modeling. I could actually tell you what side index being the height of the tree at certain times, at certain ages. Well, you see a lot of gray there. Anaerobic condition. And the species mix tells us that. Now it's down pretty deep, so room is still not limiting. But we could go closer to the creek down there and pick up just pure sweet gum, and I guarantee you we'd pick up that modeling within the top 2 feet. That means that at some point, probably in the winter, when these big pumps aren't pumping, that we've got a water table perched at that level, and then the trees have to pump it down. You get into pure gray soils, into an anaerobic condition. As a result, we don't see oak here so much. Probably partly too because it was an old field, and these are the pioneer species. Are you familiar with the word pioneer species? First inhabitants. The trees that can come in quickly, light seeded, and they can put on really quick, tall, cheap wood. So the oaks may come in later. The deeper we go, the more gray we begin to pick up, more and more water. I have seen sites where the first bucketful will put up pure gray soil, and the species would tell you that. Better not grow cherry bark there, better not try to grow yellow poplar, not even sweet gum, probably tupelo, be growing that there. And that also tells me that logging, better be careful when you're logging. Because what can happen is if I bring a skidder in here when it's too wet, you've got 30 tons every time it goes across. Wind up with that. Now what's the problem? The problem is aeration, water holding condition, room, everything goes away, and it takes a long time to capture that back. So I have some real equipment limitations on sites like this, and some of these sites are the best in Tennessee, down on these low areas, and they're huge, thousands of acres in these bottomlands, but we have to be careful how we log them. So, species from the ground up. I mean, there's a maple in the mid-story, yellow poplar up there. Guys, if we come back in 30 years, there'll be huge yellow poplars in here. And some of these same ones are the little guys. And you asked the question about the little ones, okay, righty? They're little for a reason. And if we cut them, they're not going to respond very well. So if we take the big ones out, we've made a mess. Because the little ones aren't responding, well, we can get away with a time or two. But these maples in the mid-story, they like that. They capture that space a little at a time, incrementally. So we could really degrade this stand, righty? So a forest from the ground up. Now we've also talked about a forest across the landscape. We've come from pine, that limiting factor in the soil, that wonderful cherry bark site, to something here where there's limiting, indicating that there's a water table that in part of the year is high. These trees pump it down. And then when they go dormant, the water table will rise again. We'll go a little further, closer to the creek where it's pure sweet gum down there. I'm sure that gray will be closer to the surface. Okay. We talked about a very diverse forest. If I take you to the Mississippi River, okay, with huge flooding events, we have a berm next to the river. We'll drive back into a flat. We'll have an old river channel. Guys, if you go to, not Fort Donaldson, but it's the cannon emplacement on the Mississippi River that they fought so hard for, and I can't remember the name of it now. What?
Vicksburg?
No, it's north of there. It's up above Memphis. But there was a cannon emplacement there, a small fort.
Fort
and
Pillar?
the boats came by.
Pillar,
and
wasn't
they
it?
were supposed to pull them out of the water. Well, the river's not there anymore. It's a mile out there. Rivers move back and forth laterally in these big bottoms. Righty? And when they do, they leave old return channels, they leave sloughs, they leave all kinds. And if you fly that area in the spring, different trees leafing out, there'll be a whole streak of this, a whole streak of that, different colors, because they're suited to those sites. And the elevation change may be no more than that. As a matter of fact, the elevation change, this soil may be thousands of years old. That soil may have been deposited last night. So, if you can, I tell my students, if they can learn silviculture in the South, they can practice it anywhere in the country, because I promise wherever you are from, it's less complex than this. The only forests that are as complex are the tropicals. These bottomland forests of West Tennessee and the South, all braiding up to the uplands, you take that whole thing, they're enormously complex, and they're wonderful to manage. Once again, I put pine here and it'll grow like gangbusters. But this yellow poplar's not bad either, and that's probably not that old. This